This meeting will now come to order. I will read the EPSB mission statements. The Education Professional Standards Board, in full collaboration and cooperation with its education partners, promotes high levels of student achievement by establishing and enforcing rigorous professional standards for preparation, certification, and responsible and ethical behavior of all professional educators in Kentucky. On January 18th, Governor Beshear issued Executive Order 202314 appointing Amy Lingo and Luther Rudzinski to the EPSB. Dr. Lingo is appointed to represent the public post-secondary institutions, and Captain Rudzinski is appointed to represent school administrators. Leah Sharp from the Office of Legal Services will administer the oath to swear in the new members into EPSB. Ms. Sharp, thank you for joining us.
I will read the oath in its entirety and then ask you to swear or affirm. I do solemnly swear or affirm, as the case may be, that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth and be faithful and true to the Commonwealth of Kentucky, so long as I continue a citizen thereof, and that I will faithfully execute, to the best of my ability, the office of board member of the Education Professional Standards Board according to law. And I do further solemnly swear or affirm that since the adoption of the present Constitution, I, being a citizen of this state, have not fought a duel with deadly weapons within this state, nor out of it, nor have I sent or accepted a challenge to fight a duel with deadly weapons, nor have I acted as second in carrying a challenge, nor aided or assisted any person thus offending, so help me God. Dr. Lingo?
I affirm.
I did.
I will.
Thank you, Ms. Sharp. Welcome to EPSB. Would you please take a few moments to introduce yourselves? And I'll start with Dr. Lingo.
Well, I'm the interim dean of the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Louisville. I've been at U of L for almost 18 years. Started as an assistant professor, and I was also a middle school teacher in Lexington. So happy to serve. Thank you.
Wonderful.
I'm Lisa Rudzinski. I am the assistant principal at Eastside Technical Center with Fayette County Public Schools. I have been the assistant principal for a year. Previously, I was a career and technical education teacher in the area of law enforcement after spending 22 years with the Kentucky State Police. I'm honored to be back on the board. I served as a teacher, and I thought that was an incredible experience, and to be asked back to serve again is just an honor, and I am so pleased to be here with all of you.
Thank you both, and welcome back. I don't know if I have any questions. Lisa was chair before I was, so I will definitely.
I'm glad you have it.
Speak her advice and welcome, Dr. Lingo. Serving as board secretary is Sharon Chesser. Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Amanda Ella.
Here.
Susan Reaver.
Present.
Diane Berry.
Present.
Elijah Edwards. DJ Fryer.
Present.
Kathy Gunn.
Kathy Gunn, present.
Priscilla Killer.
Present.
Amy Lingo.
Here.
Jacqueline Mayfield.
Here.
Corinne Murphy.
Here.
Meredith Pittman.
Present.
Lisa Rudzinski.
Present.
Amber Snell.
Here.
Wade Stanfield.
Present.
Vice Chair Wiesman.
Present.
Chair Mitchell.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. Ms. Chesser, has anyone signed up to open speak?
No.
All right. Seeing none, this morning, Associate Commissioner Byron Darnell joins us on behalf of the Commissioner class. I will now recognize Dr. Darnell to give the report of the Commissioner.
Use Ms. Reaper first and then sort of roll into mine, if that's okay.
Of course.
Chair. So
Yep.
at this time, I would like to recognize Ms. Reaper to give the report from the cabinet. Welcome.
I'm going to keep it brief. We are obviously just working on the legislative session and keeping our eye on the education bill, which we have concerns about. So, and I know some of you do too. So that is basically my report. We're waiting and watching.
Thank you very much for being here today. And then also, we have Dr. Amanda Ellis from the Council on Post-Secondary Education. So welcome, Dr. Ellis.
Good morning. Thank you. Just a few things to be aware of is that we do have a Student Success Summit that's coming up at the end of this month, February 27th and 28th. It will be held at the UK Gatton Student Center. And these are campus teams that are invited to attend learn about best practices and develop action plans for continuous improvement. This is hosted through our Success Collaborative, so we're excited about that. With that same group, we do have an action network that is created to examine food and housing insecurity. So we have different campus teams that are starting to talk to students about the impact of just basic needs being met and them sustaining in school and successfully completing. I know that our campuses have put forth a ton of resources, human resources, financial resources to support our students. And especially coming out of COVID, it was really elevated as paying attention to basic needs and how we meet those needs of students. And so that's exciting. We also have a dual credit webinar that's getting ready to kick off this week. The 16th is the first one. I can't even keep up with the date. It's going to be every couple of weeks. There's a lot of great work going on around dual credit. We've grown about 17% in the last couple of years since COVID. Since its inception, it's grown over 75% in participation. But we really need to always focus on quality, transferability, that it's meaningful, and really diversifying the student body who take advantage of those courses, that we really increase our access and opportunities for our students. And so there's going to be work around in those webinars of short did you know and how to find resources. Also talking about the dual credit scholarship. We are incredibly lucky in Kentucky to have support for the dual credit scholarships for students to remove financial barriers for career and technical dual credit classes as well as your traditional academic. And so those will be info bites that'll be shared every couple of weeks. We have guests that are going to be coming on who could speak to that, and we're excited about that opportunity. I will stop there. There's lots of great work going on, and we are always appreciative of being at this table. This committee matters, or this board matters, and our teachers absolutely are our foundation of what we do as we provide workforce and economic mobility for our citizens. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis, and just giving us a little bit of insight on the great work that CPE is involved in. So then first, I want to say happy Valentine's Day to everyone as it nears tomorrow. And I want to welcome Captain Rudzinski and Dr. Lingo. Wonderful to have you both joining this group of fine professionals. Second, welcome and thank you to each board member for your service to our profession. Third, thank you to Ms. Trueblood, Ms. Chester, Mr. Harrod, Ms. Salzman, Ms. Ford, Mr. Davis, Dr. Evil, Ms. Harrington in the Office of Legal Services, Ms. Listerman, Ms. Softick, Mr. Holland, Mr. Wall, Ms. Rosa Burgess, and Ms. Sharp. Each individual contributed to today's agenda. So the House Education Committee met last Tuesday, if anyone by chance hadn't heard or seen, and Dr. Glass presented information gathered by OELE regarding the educator workforce. The emphasis was primarily on the deficit between those entering the profession and those exiting the profession. So there's been a lot of banter around issues of vacancies, but the hard finite numbers just simply show the deficit that exists between those that we have coming into the profession and those that are unfortunately exiting early or reaching retirement age. The focus revolved around his repetition of pay, support, and respect in order to honor and elevate those within the field and attract those into the field. So then that leads us to where are we making progress? So the teaching and learning pathway has grown to over 2,000 students, and 102 Educators Rising chapters are now active in Kentucky. That has at least doubled the number of chapters in a year for the Educators Rising program. On March 2nd, students will gather at Bellarmine University for the statewide Ed Rising Conference. I know this may not be available to many of you, but if you have the opportunity, I highly encourage it because it is an incredible day. There are 557 students registered. This met our goal. I told Mr. John Pace, I said, let's double the number for next year. And sure enough, he's doubled the number. So he met my challenge. 385 students will be competing in a variety of different segments. And that has tripled the number competing. So we have a lot to celebrate on March 2nd. We continue to work with CPE and a variety of other stakeholders through an apprentice model for Kentucky and what that might look like and how that can perhaps take shape within the near future. The new Kentucky Educator Credentialing System, or KEX, continues to improve the flow of applying or reapplying for licensure. The system now sends out notifications months in advance of a certificate expiring. So we are seeing some momentum growing instead of relying on districts solely to remember or the individual to remember. In talking with other states, we continue to approach the possibility of a real-time educator work. So my vision goal is to have something that is very tangible for individuals to go to find out what exactly is occurring out in our districts when it comes to the hiring and keeping of our teachers and our administrators. We are engaging EPPs in conversations around preparing teacher candidates to teach reading, finding candidates whose practice scores now meet the standard as a result of last December's meeting, acceptance of the -1 SEM. We just had the waiver meeting, and we are seeing individuals that are taking advantage of the decision you all approved at the December meeting. So thank you. Last Thursday, we celebrated 104 new National Board Certified teachers and over 300 teachers recertified as well. On January 18th, P3 hosted the 7th Annual Ed Camp. Over 500 registered to learn from school leaders, teachers, KDE staff, university staff, along with keynotes from Todd Whitaker and Mike Rutherford. Every session was recorded and now available asynchronously on the P3 website. And then last Tuesday, Dr. Glass mentioned we have institutions such as WKU in the UK seeing an increase in enrollment within teacher preparation programs, but we still need many more to sustain the profession. This is not something we are not very familiar with. Alternate pathways, primarily option 6, continues to grow modestly, but unfortunately, so do the numbers of emergency certificates being issued. So I just want to thank you for your advocacy and support of EPSB and OELE, and of course, always at your disposal if you need any further information. So I appreciate your time and attention. And now I will recognize Brian Berry to give us a legislative update from Delta.
Good morning. So, as Byron and a couple others have mentioned, we're right in the middle of a legislative session, so we'll just dive right in. The good news is we have about a week before bill filings, the deadline. So next Wednesday, we'll have all the bills prepared in the session. There are a lot of education bills. I don't think there's a whole lot that are impacting you all just yet, so a pretty short summary here. They'll run straight through March 17th. That'll start the veto period where the governor can decide on action that bills that have reached his desk. They'll come back for 2 final days on the 29th and 30th, and that will end the short session for this year. We'll quickly roll into a budget session though when the interim starts in June. So it never ends, right? Couple of bills of interest. Like I said, there's not a whole lot that impacts you all directly right now, which is good. As the chair asked a little earlier, I haven't seen any bills related to practices or to the pilot for the alternative certification. So that's good. I think that the action you all took has given you all some leeway to feel those things out. I do think you'll be asked to present late in the interim, probably in November, at the last meeting, kind of on how that's played out and where things are. So just put that on the radar. Be aware that they'll almost certainly ask you to come present on those 2 things. You probably heard House Bill 1 being talked about. I mentioned this because this is the bill that continues to lower the state income tax to march to 0. Lowered the rate to 4.5% this January, sets the stage to lower another 0.5% next January 1. Obviously, this is important because as an agency, we are really reliant on state appropriations. So this shift from income tax to sales tax is really important. And so we'll, hopefully the mechanisms that they built into the legislation to kind of prevent what happened in Kansas, which was a pretty quick meltdown when they tried to do it. This is a much slower burn, so much more kind of trying to balance out the scales as they go. And hopefully it works, but certainly something we want to keep an eye on because again, we are so reliant on the state appropriation. There is one bill of interest for you all right now, and that's SB 49. So this got out of Senate Education last week. It's posted for passage on the floor tomorrow. Likely will pass the Senate tomorrow and then head over to the House where it starts over again. It increases the provisional certification period from 2 to 4 years for option 6 and for option 7 to a total of 5 years. So just wanted to make sure you all were aware that that was out there. I know OELE has done a review, so we'll probably be meeting with the sponsors at some point along the way to provide some feedback on that. In terms of other things that are happening, I think Byron or Dr. Darnell mentioned the commissioner presenting last week. And I think Chair Tipton is working on an omnibus bill related to the teacher recruitment and retention. I don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse, so I'll be a little vague in terms of what's going to make it in. We're not totally sure yet. I think he's still working with leadership to see. The big issue here is that it's a non-budget year. So anything that requires funding may have to be put off until the 24 session. So it's a little up in the air. I think one thing that we will see get filed either as part of the omnibus or potentially even a standalone bill is the teacher compact. So there's a lot of interest in getting that done. I think military affairs is especially interested in that. And that's always helpful in getting things across the finish line. So that'll likely happen. In terms of other stuff, a lot of it will be based on the cost recommendations. So they pull together a large work group. So we'll see some of that reflected. But again, I think there's a lot of questions about what goes through this session because of the appropriation aspects and needing some funding for some of these things. We also, I don't know if this impacts you all, but I'll just mention it. FAFSA is a high school grad requirement. This has been something that's been debated for a number of years now. I think the former ed chair, the retired, was the first to put this out. This time, I think that he may have a little more of a shot. There is a waiver built into the language, so folks can opt out. I think there's been quite a bit of debate on this one. I think the department is neutral on this one. So I'll oppose it. Anyway, I'm not sure that impacts your all real much, but wanted to mention that because it would be the first non-academic requirement for graduation. That's really it. It's a really quick, high-level overview of what's happening and trying to link it to what's really impacting your all a little bit. If there's any questions, happy to take them.
Any questions?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I want to thank Mr. Perry for just providing us some information on the happenings not very far from here over the Capitol. And at this time, I think I can turn it back over to Chair Mitchell to begin the meeting.
So, thank you so much. This morning, I have 2 appointments to make the Accreditation Audit Committee. This committee reviews the accreditation materials for educator preparation providers and prepares a recommendation for the EPSB with respect to the accreditation of the institution, as well as the approval of individual programs. Leanne Pickrell, principal at Paris Elementary School, is appointed as a school administrator representative, and Kevin Daly, a middle school social studies teacher with the Boone County Schools, is appointed as a teacher representative. Thank you to Ms. Pickrell and Mr. Daly for your willingness to serve. At this time, we'll move to consent items. Items A through Q are listed on the agenda as consent items. I'll give members a moment to review the list. Anyone wish to remove any items from the consent agenda for further discussion? Having received no request to remove items from the consent agenda, can I have a motion to approve consent items A through Q?
Chair Mitchell, I offer a motion for approval of the consent items.
Thank you, Mr. Stanfield. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Snell. The motion before the board is to approve consent items A through Q. All in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Moving to information item, this item is presented to the board for review and discussion only. This item is presented by Byron Darnell.
So really, I have the good role of having two competent experts on the Interstate Mobility Compact. Ms. Trueblood has been actively involved in this work from its origination and is very familiar with how this process has developed across time. And then we have, not a stranger, Mr. Adams, and it's an honor to have him here today as he now leads the NASDAQ group and certainly has been highly involved with the compact as well. So I will stop talking. Mr. Adams, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Niall. I appreciate that. And before I really kind of get into this, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to come and speak and to be back in some familiar territory. At one time, I was the executive director of the professional education standard board here in Kentucky. And it's an honor for me to be here. And it's also kind of a privilege and welcomed opportunity to be able to with some of my former colleagues and longtime friends here today as well. So I appreciate the opportunity. And there are just lots of things that I want to be able to talk to you about and with this interstate compact. One of the things that's very important is that while your faces have changed, and I know some of you all from the previous time that I was here, the work that you're doing is continuing on that we've been doing for years. And part of that is to try to make sure that people can get into the profession easily. But also meet the standards. They're there without trying to lower any of the standards there, but also trying to remove barriers. A little bit of background on NASDAQ. NASDAQ is the National Association of State Directors of Teacher Education and Certification. And usually after I say that, my time is up. So anyway, we are the organization that supports the work that your office here does and the work that your board does. We are not a lobbying group. We are not a political group, but we also try to make sure people are well informed in the work that's taking place. Just a couple of things that I would like to let you know is that you all utilize this. We have had the national or the educator ID clearinghouse in place for 34 years. And this is a place where anytime that you take adverse action against a teacher's license or certificate, is reported into that database. And all 50 states plus other jurisdictions are members of that clearinghouse. And so whenever you issue a license, you always check to make sure that that person's not had adverse license or adverse action taken against their license in another state. A couple of things that I'm going to do my commercial real quickly on this. We do have our annual conference coming up June 11th through the 13th. I'd like to invite all of you all to attend that. It will be in Phoenix, Arizona. And I think that you would find it very beneficial because this is the only annual national meeting that is dedicated to the licensing, preparation, and educator conduct. So it's really a conference that's designed for the work that you do. That being said, I want to get started with the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact, and I'm not sure that's the presentation.
I don't think this is in your domain, sir.
I've got it on my phone, but
But I mean, if you can expound on it.
well, I used to work in technology, so 17 years actually.
That's right. Take two.
The presentation is also included in the agenda book, starting on page 154. So you have the slides there as well.
Well, let me go ahead and just get started. If you all got that, you may want to refer to that as we're going through this. So a little bit of background on interstate compacts. Interstate compacts are really designed to create reciprocal professional licensing practices among states while ensuring the quality and safety of the services that are safeguarding and also safeguarding that state's sovereignty. As part of the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act, Council of State Governments joined a cooperative agreement with the Department of Defense to develop new interstate compacts with the goal of supporting military spouses primarily in employment for the licenses those spouses hold. There are 45 states that currently have interstate compacts. Plus you have the District of Columbia, Guam, and U.S. Virgin Islands that are involved with this. Those ones that I've mentioned, they have at least one compact. Kentucky actually is involved in 7 different occupational compacts already. There are 230 plus pieces of occupational licensure, compact licensure, or legislation that's out there already across the country. And they cover 9 different professions. The Council of State Governments was authorized to develop 10 new licensing compacts for the profession selected through an application process. And they had 11 different professions that applied, and teaching was one of those. NASDAQ was actually awarded not the compact itself, but to be the host of the compact. We have no authority over the compact. There will be a commission that once it's enacted, that they have the authority, but we serve as the home and try to support the work that's taking place there. So this work actually began back in 2021. And that was the assembly of a technical assistance group that came together from across the country to look at what were the needs of the profession. And then also provide recommendations to what will become the compact document team or the writing team. Your own Cassie Triple has served on that team along with some other attorneys and educators from across the country. They developed a draft in spring of 2022. That draft was then out for public input and comment throughout the entire summer. Revisions were made to the compact, and then the final version was actually developed and released in November of 2022. So this is a brand new compact. And as you heard a few minutes ago, that it is a section within, we believe, Chair Tipton's omnibus bill. So that's part of the reason I'm here, to make sure you all understand what the compact does and is. The really sole goal of the compact is to facilitate mobility of teachers across state lines with member states and to help them find a clear and direct pathway for licensure, which actually would be true reciprocity. One of the things I like to make clear whenever I'm talking about this is we're not talking about a provisional license. We're not talking about an emergency license or any kind of a temporary license. We're talking in Kentucky a full professional license, meaning that person has no other obligations around that license other than to work and to renew it every 5 years. So it is the highest license that a person can obtain in Kentucky with a bachelor's degree. And so it's not just anybody that's coming and going, and it would be equivalent in the other states that are members of the compact as well. There are some notable goals that we also include within this, and that is one of those is for the relocation of eligible military spouses. And also to help retain teachers by removing some of those barriers. One of the things that I will make very clear, and I always do in this presentation, is this will not solve a shortage problem. And I want to be very clear on it. The goal of this is not to solve a shortage problem. The solution to this shortage problem is going to involve multiple different activities and will take decades because it has been building for decades. So be very clear about that. But this does remove those barriers for those teachers who find themselves in situations where they have to be mobile. One of the things that we all understand is teachers tend to remain very sedentary. The majority of teachers tend to go to an educator preparation program that is close to where they were reared. And they either stay in that area of that educator preparation program for their career, or they return to their home district and stay there. However, there are teachers that, for whatever situation, life forces them to have to move. And what they have found, and what the data that we are finding, is when teachers move, when they've started their professional, they've been working for years, they find it difficult to get licensed into another state because of what are known as jurisdiction-specific requirements, or we refer to them as JSRs. Those JSRs could be that, well, you didn't have this reading course when you were a graduate student 20 years ago. So even though you've been practicing for the last 20 years, you need to go back and take this course before we can issue a license. Or it could be that you didn't score the state that you came from had a lower test score, so you better retake an assessment. And again, these are professionals. These are people who in most cases have been working for 3 or plus years that are in this situation. So we try to remove those barriers of the JSRs, but we also found it very important to maintain your state sovereignty. So this is very different from other compacts that, as I talk about this, because other compacts allow you to work in another state on the license you hold. And so I'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. Well, a little bit now. The way it really works out is that, and I'll use nursing as an example. If I am a total license in Utah in nursing, I would, and I need to come to Kentucky for a 12-week stint, then I would be operating in Kentucky on my Utah license through the nurses compact. And then I would go back home after those 12 weeks. We know that teachers tend to go somewhere and stay for at least a year because teaching is not something, well, I've been here for 12 weeks, time for me to move on to the next place. So when we designed this compact, we really designed it to say, we don't want to have a compact license, nor do we want someone to operate in a state on another state's license. We want to expedite the process by which that individual can obtain that new license. And that's what this does. So you actually, the compact comes down to once you issue a license, you fulfill the compact as a board, and then you have the full control over that license as you do for any other teacher that you certify or license in the state. To be eligible for the compact, a teacher must have a bachelor's degree related to the license they hold. They have to have a completion of a state-approved program from the state in which they are coming. And so you would have approved programs. And when I was here, there were 27. There may be a few more than that, I think. And then they have to have what's known as an unencumbered license. And that's the language we used in the compact. But what unencumbered means is there are no other requirements on that license, meaning that you have fulfilled all requirements for that full professional license, nor do you have any pending disciplinary actions or maybe actions that have taken place in the past. The compact will utilize an asset clearinghouse that I mentioned earlier as the way for people to be able to check, have there been adverse actions taken against the license in the past. And the receiving state has authority from the compact to be able to say, do you know of any pending action, sending state that you can tell us? And they can say yes or no on that. There either is pending action or there's not pending action taking place at that time. Then keep in mind, if you find out about something you did not discover at the time of the issuance of that license, you still have the authority over that license, so you can go back and revoke that license if you feel necessary. Let's see. The other thing that the teachers that hold that compact eligible license, they would be granted the equivalent or as close to equivalent in the receiving state that they hold from the sending state. And I say close to equivalent because some states will have licenses that for elementary could be K through 6. Others may have K through 5. You cannot issue a license you don't have. So you would be issuing a license that is close to the equivalent that you have for what that person is coming with. I usually get questions about endorsements and different things, and also what a person has an administrative license. The compact language is vague enough, broad enough, really, for a person, for the licensing office to be able to say, you know, we see that you've got these other endorsements. We have an equivalent or close to equivalent endorsement. We also see that you have this administrative license. We can process that at the same time because it's probably more efficient to process it all at once as opposed to coming back and trying to do that later. But that's completely up to you as a board if you decide you only want to stick with the teacher license and not do the others. But you have the ability to be able to say, yes, we have these, we can go ahead and issue this other license that is equivalent to what you. See some slides up there. One of the things I want to go to is the population carve-out slide. So there's a couple more down. There you go. Thank you. So the two different carve-outs we have are military spouses and career technical education. Let me talk real briefly about military spouses. What tends to happen with the military spouse is they will start a program in the state in which their spouse is assigned or stationed, and then the spouse gets transferred after 2 years. The program they're in may be a secondary program, and they are actually operating on some type of a temporary provisional license. What we found was they have to start over typically in a brand new state, and they have to go through all these different processes in order to even be eligible for a license in that receiving state. And so part of this, as I said, the Department of Defense was involved with it. We set it up so that the Department of Defense, or excuse me, the military spouses actually can transfer to an equivalent temporary provisional type license while they finish the program in which they are enrolled, or they may enroll in a new program in your state and transfer those credits. The other thing is career and technical. As you all are aware, career and technical educators, their license may not require a bachelor's degree. Usually it's work experience combined with a high school diploma, and they may be required at some point to get an associate's degree. So there's a carve out for them because they still hold that full professional license within the company. So, and then under other important considerations on the last slide, all this does not close out any of your existing pathways to licensure. You still have all of those fully in place. This just creates an expedited format. And the vision that we have for this is that there actually be a data exchange system. And the compact talks a little bit about data exchange. There will not be a database of all licenses that are held in every state. What would happen is, the way that I describe this typically is a teacher would say, I am living in Utah and I need to move to Kentucky. Is Kentucky part of the compact? Because I know Utah is. And is my license in Utah, does it qualify for the compact? And the teacher would fill out the form. He or she would get information that says, yes, your license actually does qualify for the compact. And the teacher would say, well, send this to Kentucky. Kentucky would then say, okay, we received this. We need to verify this with the state of Utah. The data exchange system would do that. And then Kentucky would say, based on the information we have received, here is your Kentucky license. There are things in there that states want to have that this actually does somewhat remove, and the transcripts is a good example. One of the things we found in doing this work is that transcripts tend to be a hidden cost that someone has to go back and pay for original transcripts. The way that this is designed is the sending state has verified that person has a bachelor's degree. And the commission itself would actually determine what data is exchanged between the two states. And part of that information could be an unofficial copy of those transcripts, just so the receiving state has some verification as well. But we are not requiring the teacher to spend money doing these other things, nor would this also be a situation where you have to go back and finish another course that may not have been offered when you were getting your original license. I mentioned the JSRs, and that's where this kind of plays in. One of the things that the compact does is it does allow you as a state to say, we still think these certain things are very important. And so within those things, you can require the JSRs at the time of renewal. But there's nothing in the compact that says you have to wait 5 years before that person completes those things. They can actually be working on those throughout that time. And if there's a training that you feel is very important, then you could be saying, you got your compact license or you got your license, but we want you to finish this training in the first year. So that would be part of the way that that actually unfolds and plays out for the individual and for you as a board. The governing body, I mentioned earlier that NASDAQ is the host or the home of the compact. We have no authority over the compact. The compact will actually be run by a commission, and each member state will have one person on that commission. And the way the compact reads is that person would be the person who works in the licensing office for the agency that oversees teacher licensure in each state. We asked that it not be we really wanted it to not be a political appointee, because while you all do great work, you probably don't understand the intricacies and all the different items that go into trying to license something. And so we wanted to make sure we had people on the commission together that knew those details so that they could work through the rules and any conflicts that may arise. And the compact, actually, the full power of it ends once you issue a license. Once you issue that license, then your rules, your regulations, your statutes all kick in over that license you have to. So I've done a lot of talking. I will kind of stop that point and see what questions you want me to
Mr. Adams, that was really interesting. Thank you so much. What is the time frame for this commission to be established to run the compact?
What has to happen, the way the compact is written, 10 states have to pass legislation to enact the compact. Once 10 states have passed legislation to enact the compact, then the compact becomes available. It will take probably another year for that commission to come together and set up rules by which they will operate and be able to start functioning within the compact. So we now have, if you look at, you can go to a website, I think it's in your documents or your items, it's teachercompact.org. You'll find a number of different resources there, but one of the menu items is a legislative compact map. And it shows you where legislation has been introduced in at least 10 states so far. We don't know that it's going to pass in all those states. I always used to say when I was here that you can count on about 3 years before some legislation gets enacted. It has been interesting to me that the Council of State Governments has been extremely optimistic that they believe it's very possible 10 states will pass this in the first year because they do see this as a way to help the shortage issue, but they recognize it's not going to solve the shortage issue. But it will keep those people in the profession that move who tend to say, you know, it's not worth it. I'm going to go out and find a job in retail or find a job in some kind of business. So again, it would take 10 states to enact that legislation, pass that legislation, and then the commission comes together and we'll start working on rules once we have those 10 states.
Yeah, go for it.
This may be a question for staff. How many people have we lost to education in Kentucky through certification because they don't, like, how many people would this affect? Do we have any numbers on that?
I don't know that we have numbers, because they wouldn't necessarily be in the system or have that tracking with them. We do see them though, especially in our border districts where they, around the recency requirement of their preparation. That has been something that we've heard from those superintendents a lot. And so I know when this was presented to the KASA group in December, those superintendents especially were very supportive of this. The long answer, no, I do not have the data on them.
And that would be very difficult data typically because you don't necessarily know who's coming that has looked online and said, Ms. Trueblood brings up a real valid point. This will benefit a lot of your border districts because a person could have a license in Indiana, and if Indiana and Kentucky are both members of the compact, then they would be able to get a license in Kentucky and may still remain living in Indiana, but they would be able to get a professional license in Kentucky. So that's one of the areas that I see being very beneficial are those border districts. And that's one of those areas that you will see, if you've not heard, which I dare say you have, because I heard it quite often when I was in this role, that the border districts sometimes have a lot of trouble because they are harder to get to sometimes.
I guess this is more like a thought or I'm trying to understand because I think this could be great. I have friends that would benefit from this. I have a sibling in the military, so I've experienced a lot of these stories and heard this. I know I looked to make sure they have to have the bachelor's degree and then completion of a state approved program, like a ed prep program. Does that mean at the university level? I'm just trying to comprehend what if they obtain their certification through a program that we have as a board not approved in the state of Kentucky that's like come to us and wanted to be approved and we decided that it didn't meet our standard. How could that impact? I just don't want, and again, I'm elementary background, so sometimes I ask a lot of questions. It's new territory and I just want to make sure I'm understanding everything. I just wouldn't want programs, college prep programs that we haven't approved to end up here by proxy. Could you maybe elaborate on that?
Yes, I can. And it's important to keep in mind, it's the sending state that has approved the program that the person has completed. So this is not really about preparation as much as it is do they hold that professional license.
Okay.
So, and what we found when I was here is that a lot of times the educator preparation influence has dissipated by year 3 of actually being in practice. And by year 5, that they've moved on from the professional practice of that initial preparation that gets them started in the classroom. Again, it's a sending state that has verified, yes, they have completed one of our approved programs. And those approved programs, the compact does not really differentiate. It can be a university-based traditional program, or it can be an alternate route program as well.
Do you have a projected cost for the applicants, or will there be a cost for them?
One of the things that you will be able to do is, since you still are processing the license, your license costs will still be maintained. There is on the website there, I believe that I gave, there is a projected cost of what it would be for a fiscal statement. The state should look at and consider. Once the compact is in place, there will be someone who is supposed to direct, kind of be the director of the commission. And then there occasionally will be some costs associated around legal advice and counsel. And what we are hoping to do is that NASDAQ can provide some of those cost offset. One of the nice things about this, by not maintaining a database of licenses like other compacts do, that reduces our costs tremendously. The other thing is that since the clearinghouse is already in place, other compacts have to build those things. We already have that in all 50 states already participating.
Any other questions? Mine's not really a question, it's more of a just statement. I definitely think this would be a great thing for Kentucky. I just would encourage us to make sure that this could be great for border districts. And I teach on a border district of Tennessee, and but I also think that that means that us as Kentucky need to make sure that we are attractive to teachers so that our teachers don't go to those border states. And so I just want to make sure that as this can be a great thing for us, we need to make sure that we are attractive and not losing teachers through this compact.
Let me comment on that briefly, because that is a concern is brought up and comes quite often. One of the things that the Council of State Governments has been able to discern from other compacts they have in place is there is a tendency to have this fear that, well, if a person get a license in the state, they'll go. The data don't show that. The data show that a person does not go to another state just because they can get a license there. They go to another state because life circumstances. They may be having to care for an elderly relative. Their spouse is transferred because of work. They're wanting to move because their children are moving, so they want to be very close to grandchildren. Those are the reasons that people tend to move from one location to another location. The thing that you have to keep in mind, you are already having teachers that move, and you have teachers that move in. What we want to try to do through this compact is ensure the best opportunity for those people moving in to stay in the profession. And right now, is what we have found, a lot of people leave the profession just because they don't want to go through those jurisdiction-specific requirements, and they can make enough money to be happy working elsewhere.
This might be more of a staff question as well, but it looks like Kentucky already participates in maybe 7 interstate licensure compacts. And so just, maybe feedback from those other areas about Sarah's question of, reduced requirements, if they've seen any issues with that, since they're already participating, those professions.
Just as a clarifier, this will take legislative action. You mentioned this early on, but it does have to occur in statute.
That is correct. To be a member of the compact, it does require legislative action and enactment by your legislature, signature by your governor. And so once you pass that, and what will happen is, let's say that 9 states pass it this year, and that legislation stays in place for those 9 states until that 10th state comes on, maybe in the next session. So it's not like you have to go back through this process every year. Once we get 10, then we actually carry out the compact. But it can sit there for a year or two. One of the things that Council of State Governments advised us was to try to keep that number around 10. There is one compact that requires 35 states to pass legislation, and they have been waiting years to get that compact passed. And so we see that this will benefit those states. And then 10 may sound like a small number, but we really believe there will be more that come on board, if not in the first year, in the following years, because they need to see.
Are there border states of Kentucky that are looking into the compact?
If you will look at that compact map, you can see the different states that have that. And then there are about 3 or 4 more states that we expect to have legislation filed this week. So.
Say, Mr. Perry mentioned that when he was talking, but there's been nothing introduced yet about that. Okay.
Still anticipating a bill filing, but it did not occur.
Is there a bill sponsor for that right now?
Chairman Zip is bill sponsors.
I was just gonna add, and it's tangential, but from an educator preparation perspective, the opportunity to actually recruit students actively into educator prep programs from the states that are part of the compact. One of the items that you mentioned earlier, Jimmy, was the idea that when you study here, you actually stay here. And a lot of that has to do for our teachers, the 200 hours of field and the student teaching experience that they have within the member school districts of Kentucky. And so there is some opportunity here to bring people from different states to study here, with the idea that they would have the opportunity to return home because of, reciprocity or the compact or those sorts of things. But there's a real opportunity here to actually bring in additional folks to the state who would be interested in our high quality educator preparation programs. So.
And I will add on that just real briefly. One of the things that I've had the privilege and honor to work in 4 different school districts in Kentucky, and my last position in public education was the chief of human resources for Jefferson County Schools in Louisville. And I can say Louisville because you all know where that is, but in other parts of the country, I would say Louisville. Anyway, that being said, that district recruits from out of state, and Dr. Amy Green Webb has done a tremendous job over the years finding the locations where they have the most success recruiting. They will hire anywhere from 300 to 450 new teachers a year. So there is a large demand in that district. One of the things that the compact would actually be very beneficial is when they're on those recruiting situations, or if any district is recruiting, they could actually look at the license a teacher currently holds and know if that's in the compact. And if that license is in the compact, then they can say, we can get you a license in Kentucky in a short amount of time, but your license that you hold is part of the compact. And the way that will operate is that each state that becomes a member of the compact, they will say, here are the licenses that we have that meet the qualifications of the compact.
I was just going to add again, just more a statement than a question, but first of all, I think this compact has a lot of promise, and I think a lot of groups have it from it for sure. But just to echo the chair's statement, being a Northern Kentuckian, we're notorious for going on vacations, and when people ask where we're from, we, as much as we're proud of our Kentucky heritage, it's easier sometimes to Cincinnati. My wife gets mad whenever I answer that on a vacation, but point is, while I totally acknowledge and agree that there probably is hard data to support that for most people when they are, going across to a different state, it is because of circumstances. I do know in Northern Kentucky we do often lose teachers because of some attractiveness issues across the river, because we essentially are already there. So I would just echo the chair's statement that I think if our state decides to move forward with this, we're going to take a hard look at, keeping people attracted to our state.
And that's part of the many actions that need to take place to reduce this.
Yes, and don't hear me say that I'm against this at all. I just know as a Simpson County right next to the border, if Tennessee, is going to pay more and you can still live in Simpson County, you just go right across the border and go there. So I'm just saying, I think we need to, not we, but I think that our legislator, as they think of this, is maybe solving a problem, not the whole problem. there. And so,
I believe, at the annual conference, I don't think there were three representatives from Kentucky that heard your presentation on the compact.
You would have had, we've actually spoken to a number of your legislators at different meetings, in addition to our conference. We've also spoken, or you say in our conference, about the CSG.
Yes, correct.
Yes, I did part of this presentation at Council of State Governments annual conference, and we probably had more than three there. We actually had a packed house, and there were a number of people from Kentucky there. And I was very pleased to see representation from Kentucky, both in the Senate and the House. And then they have participated in other presentations that we've done through the National Council of State Legislators as well. And then we did present this summer with the Southern Reach Education Board, which is made up of legislators who were also in attendance at that.
other questions, comments?
Would you be able to give us some numbers of like how many people have used this in the last year or two?
No one has yet. And the reason is it just was finished in November.
Okay.
So it has to be passed by those state legislators that introduced the bill. And once it becomes 10 states past that, then we will start to be able to. And another thing, keep in mind, if you can issue a license to a teacher, you're going to issue a license to a teacher. Every state will. I commonly get the question of, well, we have higher standards than the other states. And I hear that, and I tell them I hear that from 49 other states as well. And the reality is we all want good people in front of our kids. It's not just for their learning ability, but for their safety. We want to make sure that everything is there so that kids can do well. So if you've got someone coming in, you're going to try to find a way to get them a license. What this does is take a group of those people and say, we can get you a license very quickly. If you qualify for the compact, here's your license. But if you don't qualify for the compact, well, we still want to get you in. So let's figure out a way to do that. And your office here is tremendous at doing it. And they work very diligently to make sure that people can get licensed in Kentucky. And I say that from experience and gratitude for the work that they do.
Well, thank you so much for presenting today. And if we have any other questions, I know we can probably reach out to you as well.
And NASDAQ.net is our website, or Jimmy.Adams. It's Jimmy with a Y.Adams at NASDAQ, NASDT.org. Thank you so much for the time today.
Yeah, thank you. Next, we have action items. These items are presented to the board for action and will require a motion and a vote. Action item A is presented by Cassie Truflow.
So action item A, this was brought before you at the last meeting as an information item and is now back before you to take action. This is part of your ongoing regulation review, where you do have to review your regulations every 7 years to ensure that they remain in effect. This one was previously certified with the intent to amend in September of last year, or well, September 21, sorry about that. And you do have to file this amendment by March. So what I have before you is the same amendment that you saw in December. 16 KAR 4060 sets the renewal requirements for your certificates. And with this amendment, we are removing the reference to outdated applications. We have been doing that with all of the regulations as we have moved to the online platform. And additionally, it expands the language regarding the experience gains for substitute teaching and at the higher education level for that to count for renewal. These action item is on page 163, and the language around substitutes and higher ed is on page 167 of your agenda book. If you wish to approve this amendment today, we will get them filed by Wednesday, which is the cutoff for February. So it will be published starting in March. And if everything were to go smoothly, which we always hope for, then it would become effective around the end of June, beginning of July. Do you have any questions about the process or the amendment?
Any questions? All right. Well, at this time, I will need a motion.
Make a motion to approve action item A.
Thank you, Kevin. And second, Mr. Bill, thank you. Motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 4060, certificate renewals and teaching experience amendments. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. And next, we have action item B.
Morning.
Good morning, board.
Before I introduce the chair, I just wanted to remind you all of the regulatory requirements concerning accreditation and program review. So 16 KR 5010 identifies the requirements and processes for EPPs to demonstrate evidence of meeting standards for accreditation and program approval. EPPs may pursue state accreditation or national accreditation from an EPSB approved accreditor. So for state only, the existing policy states in accordance with 16 KR 5010, section 2.2, state accreditation is based on Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation, or CAPE standards. All educator preparation programs leading to certification or rank change must be reviewed and approved by EPSB. For national accreditation, the EPSB has approved the Association for Advancing Quality in Educator Programs, for AQUA, and the Council of the Accreditation of Educator Preparation, or CAPE, as national accreditors for EPPs. All educator preparation programs leading to certification or rank change must be reviewed and approved by EPSB. In addition to your state accreditation decision, the AAC also reviews and makes recommendations to the board regarding the approval of all certification programs offered at the EPP. Today, we have one institution that acquired national accreditation, and under the updated regulation, will only need approval for the programs. And then we have one that sought state-only accreditation, which you will approve both their accreditation and their programs. So I will now hand this over to the AAC Chair, Dr. Faye Peters, for her summary of the review and decision process.
Good morning. Good morning. The AAC is charged with reviewing and making a recommendation to the board regarding the approval of all certification programs offered at an EPP for initial and advanced programs per KAR 5010. In the case of action item B, the AAC met on December the 9th, 2022, and examined all materials for initial and advanced programs for Asbury University and recommends program approval.
At this time, I will need a motion.
Open.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Is there a second? Thank you. Now, motion before the board is to approve the educator preparation programs at Asbury University. Is there any discussion?
I want to offer congratulations that there were no areas for improvement. I think that's exceptional at the national.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next is action item C.
Yes, next we have action item C, the state-only accreditation site visit for Transylvania University. This visit occurred on March 6 through 8, 2022. The site visit was conducted virtually. The state site visitors reviewed the accreditation of Transylvania University's initial programs related to the current 5 CAPE standards. After the off-site formative review and on-site visit, the state site visitors recommended no AFIs or stipulations as indicated in your board material. The EPSB's Accreditation Audit Committee reviews and recommends both state accreditation of the EPP and program approval of every licensure program an EPP offers per KAR 5010. The AAC met on December 9, 2022, and examined all of the materials from the off-site and on-site accreditation reviews for Transylvania University, as well as their program review documents and presentation at the AAC meeting. The AAC made the following recommendations on AFIs and stipulations from the site visit report. Standard 1, no AFIs or stipulations cited. Standard 2, no AFIs or stipulations cited. Standard 3, no AFIs or stipulations cited.
Standard 4, no ASIs or stipulations cited, and Standard 5, no ASIs or stipulations were cited. The AAC further recommended the following for standards met or not met. Standard 1 met, Standard 2 met, Standard 3 met, Standard 4 met, and Standard 5 met. Based on the above, the AAC's recommendations to the board are 1, accreditation, and 2, approval of the initial level educator preparation program at Pennsylvania University.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to grant accreditation and approve the educator preparation programs at Transylvania University.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. The motion before the board is to grant accreditation and improve the education preparation programs at Transylvania University. Is there any discussion?
Do we need to specify, Chair, that we are approving initial level educator preparation programs? I see that in the recommendation from the AAC.
The language that you have will cover.
Okay, thank you.
Glad Mr. Trueblood is here with us. Any other questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
The board is now ready to review waiver request KRS 1610281N, provide that the board has the authority to waive its administrative regulations when a request is submitted by an applicant for certification, a post-secondary institution, or superintendent of a local school board or school district. When requesting a waiver, the requesting party must submit to the board a written request along with appropriate justification of the waiver. EPSB staff reviewed the waivers with the EPSB's waiver committee during an open meeting immediately prior to this meeting, and the waiver committee formulated recommendations. Brendan Herod and Crystal Board will present the waiver request to the full board, and waiver committee chair Kathy Gunn will present the committee's recommendation for final action, starting with waiver A presented by Brendan Herod.
Chairman, good morning, everybody. We'll start with waiver A. It was submitted on by Morehead State University on behalf of William Dillon. Mr. Dillon is a music education student at Morehead State University. They are trying to seek an elementary placement, but are having difficulty due to the lack of availability of teachers that are available to do those placements. So they are asking that Mr. Dillon complete his 70-day student teaching assignment in the middle and high school setting, waiving a portion of 16K or 5.
And Ms. Gunn, what was the committee's recommendation?
The waiver committee recommended that EPSB grant the waiver.
All right. At this time, I will need a motion.
So moved.
All right. Thank you. And do I have a second? Thanks. The motion before the board is to approve waiver 16KAR 5040 alternative student teaching placement request for William Dillon. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next, we have waiver B.
A few of these are very similar. This is also from Morehead State University. This is for Dexter Kidd. They are requesting that Dexter Kidd, who is also a music education student, have the elementary requirement waived and do his placement at the middle and high school level as well.
Ms. Gunn, the recommendation.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by Morehead State University. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. This time I'll need a motion.
Make a motion to approve waiver B.
Thank you. And do I have a second? Second. Thank you. The motion before the board is to approve 16KAR 5040 alternative student teaching placement request for Dexter Kidd. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Moving to waiver C.
Waiver C submitted by Morehead State University on behalf of Charles Bolbert. They are requesting that Mr. Bolbert has his requirement for elementary placement waived and do his placement at the middle and high school level as well.
And Ms. Gunn.
The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you. And is there a second? Thank you. The motion before the board is to approve 16KAR 5040 alternative student teaching placement for Charles Bolbert. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Thank you. And next we will go to waiver D.
Waiver D, also similar, Morehead State University requesting on behalf of Mason Eagle. Mr. Eagle, they're requesting Mr. Eagle's placement in elementary waived for a middle and high school placement as well.
And Ms. Dunn.
The committee recommends that EPSB grant.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Motion.
All right, and a second. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 5040 alternative student teaching placement request for Mason Eagle. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next up is waiver E.
Waiver E submitted by Morehead State University is an alternative student teaching placement request for Hannah Marcellet. If it's Marcellet, I apologize. She's currently a moderate to severe disability student at Morehead State University. They're having an issue finding a placement in MSD in McGoffin County. So what they've done is they've organized a three-prong approach. They have a teacher there that has 1 year of experience with an MSD certification that is a graduate of Morehead State University, but they would like to place them under an LBD teacher that has over 10 years of experience as the cooperating teacher that would be of record. This teacher is also the mentor of the new hire. So even though she's in her first year, she will be mentored by the LBD teacher as well. She will also oversee Ms. Marcellet as she's doing her student teaching. This gives her an opportunity to get some of her content from the MSD teacher that's only got 1 year experience, while also being supervised by a teacher that has over the 3 year requirement of 10 years. They also will have a representative from KVEC, the local cooperative, that will come in and oversee Ms. Marcellet and the teacher that has 1 year of experience as well. This is a cooperation that they have with that cooperative that comes in and does some additional training for new hires in special ed. There's a letter that was submitted by McGoffin County Schools, the director of special education, is in support of this placement. We also have a letter from the principal that speaks to the cooperating teacher's experience and how well she is as a mentor for new hires and her abilities with rapport with students and her dependability.
Thank you. Ms. Scott.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and submitting supporting documentation submitted by Morehead State University. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
A lot of Ms. Berry, let's go with you. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 5040 alternative student teaching placement request for Hannah Marcellet. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Thank you. And now we have waiver F presented by Crystal.
Thank you, Chair. Waiver F is requested by Bergen County Schools. They've had a high school biology position that has been posted for since pretty much the beginning of the school year with no qualified applicants available. They do have one applicant. However, the GPA does not, on his undergraduate degree, does not meet the 2.5 threshold. The candidate in question has a 2.23 cumulative GPA, also does not meet the 3.0 in the last 60. So the district is requesting a waiver of the GPA requirement in 2.
Thank you. Ms. Gunn.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and the committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. At this time, I will need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second? The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2120, request to waive emergency certificate requirements for Bergen County Schools. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next, we have waiver G.
Waiver G is requested by April Piper. She is a former KDE employee with 15 years experience here at the department. Prior to coming to KDE, she taught 12 years high school English, and she has completed administrator certification programs through Murray State University. She already completed DPP, supervisor of instruction, and holds those certifications. Additionally, she completed the superintendent certification program, but she has not served in a certified administrator position. She's requesting that the board accept the 15 years experience, well, to meet the minimum 2 years experience needed in reg. Section 5 of 16 KAR 3090 states at least 2 years of experience in a position of school principal, supervisor of instruction, guidance counselor, director of people personnel, director of special education, school business administrator, local district coordinator of vocational education, or coordinator, administrator, or supervisor of district-wide services. Other administrative experience may be substituted for this requirement with the approval of the Education Professional Standards Board. And in her time with KDE, she served as academic program manager overseeing gifted and talented and IDEA, and also provided administrative support to directors of special ed across the state.
The waiver committee reviewed the request and supporting documentation submitted by the applicant. After some discussion, the committee recommends that the EPSB approve the applicant's experience.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion. Thank you. And do I have a second?
I do.
All right. Ms. Weedman, I heard you first. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 3090, request to allow other administrative experience for issuance of superintendent certification for April Piper. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next up, we have waiver H.
Waiver H is requested by Campbell County Schools on behalf of Mr. Nate Owens. He is a 2019 graduate of the University of Cincinnati. This waiver is a waiver request of 4030, which is the out-of-state preparation regulation, which requires educators from another state who's completed their preparation program to possess the equivalent certificate from the state or jurisdiction where they completed their program. Mr. Owens has already applied for certification in Kentucky. He's already taken and passed Kentucky's LBD praxis test that we require. He just has not obtained the Ohio certificate from the state of Ohio, since he is employed and lives in Kentucky. So the district is requesting a waiver of that section of the regulation.
Thank you. Ms. Gunn?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant waiver H.
Thank you. I'll need a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 4030, request to waive equivalent certification requirement for out-of-state out-of-state prepared educator Nate Owens. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay, and the motion passes. Next, we have waiver I.
Waiver I is requested by Ms. Samantha Monin. This is a waiver request of 16 KAR 6010, specifically the test recency requirement, which states that praxis tests are valid for 5 years from the date taken. She completed an LBD and elementary education dual certification program in 2017. With the board's recent adoption of the -1 standard error measure at the December board meeting, her one test score that she lacked in order to become certified, that test was taken prior to, well, it was longer than 5 years ago. So now with the -1 SEM, that score falls within the range, but it's more than 5 years old now. So she's
requesting the waiver of the 5-year requirement.
Thank you. Ms. Gunn?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that EPSB grant this waiver.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 6010, request to waive 5-year test recency requirement for Samantha Moe. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Waiver J.
Waiver J is requested by Ms. Ira Rogers, and just to be clear, this is, I believe, we had this come up in the waiver committee meeting. I believe this person is located in Letcher County. But she completed an LBD special education program in 2010. She did not meet the praxis testing requirement at that time. The test was taken in 2012. That was the most recent test. And since that time, she went on to complete a school counseling program, has been serving as a school counselor within her school district. But now with the -1 SEM, her test score from 2012 does fall within the range of the standard error measure. And she's asking that the board waive the 5-year recency requirement, and the test has not changed in that time. It's still the same test number and assessment that was previously.
Thank you. Ms. Gunn?
The waiver committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that EPSB grant this waiver.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 6010, request to waive 5-year recency requirement for Ira Rogers. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Waiver K.
Waiver K is requested by Ms. Amanda Sturgill. This is also a waiver of the testing regulation 6010. She had completed an LBD program at Union College in 2010. She had completed the testing requirements at that time. However, due to an oversight from the university, and subsequently not validating the correctness of the certification once it was issued, the LBD certification was not added. It was not included. The institution had only recommended for the rank change and not for the certification that she should have received in 2010. It wasn't until recently when she went to apply for an LBD position that she realized that it wasn't on her certificate because she's been in an elementary classroom for the past 10 years. So in the documents that were provided, her institution also provided a letter of support that it was left off of her recommendation at that time. So since the test score is more than 5 years old, she is requesting the waiver, same regulation.
Thank you. Ms. Gunn?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that EPSB grant waiver K, and everyone check your certification every year, please.
Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 6010, request to waive 5-year test recency requirement for Amanda Sturgill. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. And last waiver of the day, we have waiver L.
Waiver L is requested by Mr. Derek Halbert. This is a same regulation, 16 KAR 6010, 5-year test recency. He is a 2022 MAT graduate from Georgetown College. His program was for middle school math. He's been working in the school district or in Scott County schools. He didn't realize until just recently when he went to submit his paperwork for certification that his middle school math content assessment was taken April of 2017, which expired in April of 2022. So with a lot of support from his district, most notably his principal, who was contacting me on his behalf, they are requesting a waiver of the 5-year recency requirement.
Yeah, the committee recommends that EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 6010, request to waive 5-year test recency requirement for Derek Talbot. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay, and the motion passes. We have 2 alternative route to certification applications. These applicants are pursuing the option 1 exceptional work experience route to certification. This is one of the alternative routes established by the legislature in KRS 161048. An applicant with exceptional work experience must have an offer of employment from a local school district, a bachelor's or graduate degree meeting minimum GPA requirements and an academic major or a passing score on the academic content assessment in the area in which certification is being sought. The board will need to determine if the applicant's work experience constitutes exceptional work experience. The applications are presented by Ms. Wood.
Thank you. Our first alternative route candidate is Natalie Fields. She has a job offer in Jefferson County Schools. JCPS has submitted the application on her behalf for the area of theater. She has 15 years or over 15 years of work experience in the area of technical theater and acting theater. She has founded, she has founded private programs for teaching acting lessons and such in the area. She also has participated and ran theater programs in schools and summer camps. She has also produced, done costuming, worked as a fashion designer. So she has extensive experience in the area, as well as a bachelor's in fine arts in the area of drama. So there was no testing requirement. That degree counted as the degree in the field. All materials were present, and her application meets the requirements of KRS 161048.
Thank you. This time I'll need a motion.
Motion to approve, alternate application.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sampa. I heard you first. The motion before the board is to approve the application for Natalie Fields, theater in all grades. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Application B.
Application B is requested by Barron County Schools on behalf of Mr. Daniel Pike. This is for a secondary English position. Mr. Pike has over 23 years in the newspaper industry as a journalist. He served as a reporter, editor, and numerous roles within that field. There was a lot that was listed in here. I won't go into it, but it was all around journalism and writing and editing. He has a bachelor's degree in journalism, which also he did also take the praxis test. His scores were passing, so all requirements were met under the statute.
Thank you. This time I'll need a motion. Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. The motion before the board is to approve the application for application for Daniel Pike in English grades 8 through 12. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Lloyd. I will now open the floor to any board member or board comments. Does anybody have any comments they'd like to share?
No comments, but just a thank you to all of you guys. Make it possible for us to do it. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll sort of ditto that. I've received a lot of comments from people about their certification woes. And so I listen to them and I direct them to EPSB. And just the other day, someone was talking about the difficulties that we're having, but yet when they called in, they received, they said, the best customer service they have ever received, not just in education, but just in general. So thank you for that. It goes a long way. People notice. Any other comments?
I'll echo on the change with the praxis. I have a student teacher right now, and she was like, EPSB did something to change in my score. I was only off by 1 point. So it's nice to be able to see that we were having an impact.
Anyone else? All right, at this time, I believe we are ready to go into closed session pursuant to KRS 61810(1)(c) and J to conduct a character and fitness review and to review potential actions relating to the complaint and reports. At this time, I'll need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
And is there a second? Second. The motion before the board is to go into closed session. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. And the motion passes.
Sorry.
We are now ready to go into closed session. I will need a motion to go into open session. Do I have a motion?
You do. I offer a motion that we return to open session.
Thank you. And is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. Motion before the board is to go back into open session. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion carries. We are now back in open session, and at this time, we will vote on the items discussed during closed session. For character and fitness, 1, approve. 2, deny. 3 through 10, approve. 11, defer. 12 through 16, approve. 17, deny. 18 through 22, approve. 23, deny. For CA4, online character and fitness, number 1, deny. 2 through 7, approve. 8, deny. 9, approve. 10 through 18, approve. For agreed orders 1 through 28, accept. On findings of fact, conclusions of law, recommended order, and appeal rights, for number 1, accept on findings of facts, accept on conclusions of law, and accept on recommended orders. For educator cases, number 1, attorney review. Number 2 through 6, admonish. Number 7, attorney review. Number 8, dismiss with prejudice. Number 9 through 13, attorney review. Number 14, admonish. Number 15, attorney review. 16, attorney review. 17, defer for training, code of ethics, and cultural sensitivity training. 18 through 21, attorney review. 22, dismiss with prejudice. 23, defer for training, trauma-informed care training. 24 through 29, attorney review. Number 30, defer for training, anger management, and code of ethics training. 31 through 34, attorney review. 35, dismiss with prejudice. 36, attorney review. 37 through 40, dismiss with prejudice. 41, attorney review. 42, admonish. 43 through 51, dismiss with prejudice. 52, attorney review. 53 through 59, dismiss with prejudice. Number 60, admonish. 61, dismiss with prejudice. 62, admonish. I apologize. Number 60 was dismissed without prejudice. Sorry about that. 61 was dismissed with prejudice. 62 was dismissed without prejudice. 63 through 65, dismissed with prejudice. 66 through 69, refer to hearing. Number 70, dismissed with prejudice. 71 through 75, refer to hearing. 76 and 77, attorney review. 78 through 81, defer for training, admin code training. 82, attorney review. 83, dismiss with prejudice. 84, defer for training, admin code training. 85 through 94, dismiss with prejudice. 95, defer for training, admin code training. 96, dismiss with prejudice. 97 through 101, defer for training, admin code training. 102 and 103, dismiss with prejudice. 104 and 105, defer for training, admin code training. 106, dismiss with prejudice. 107, defer for training, admin code training. 108 through 110, dismiss with prejudice. 111, defer for training, admin code training. 112 through 113, dismiss with prejudice. 114 through 115, defer for training, admin code training. 116, dismiss with prejudice. 117, defer for training, admin code training. 118 through 127, dismiss with prejudice. 128, defer for training, admin code training. 129 through 132, dismiss with prejudice. 133 through 135, defer for training, admin code training. 136, dismiss with prejudice. 137 through 140, defer for training, admin code training. 141, dismiss with prejudice. 142 and 143, defer for training, admin code training. 144 through 146, dismiss with prejudice. 147 through 151, defer for training. 152 and 153, dismiss with prejudice. 154 through 156, defer for training, admin code training. 157, dismiss with prejudice. 158, defer for training, admin code training. 159, dismiss with prejudice. 160, defer for training, admin code training. 161, dismiss with prejudice. 162, defer for training, admin code training. 163 and 164, dismiss with prejudice. 165 and 166, attorney review. 167, dismiss with prejudice. 168, defer for training, hiring of certified and classified employees training. At this time, we'll go on record with how we individually vote, starting with Ms. Wheeler.
Sarah Weidman recused from agreed orders 8 and 10, agreeing on all the rest.
TJ Pryor, agree on all.
Jacqueline Mayfield, agree on all. Lisa Rudzinski, agree on all except for number 12, where I dissent on character and fit.
Meredith Pittman, agree on all. Priscilla Keller, agree on all.
Corinne Murphy, agree on all.
Susan Reber, agree on all.
Amanda Ellis, agree on all. Amy Lingo, agree on all.
Kathy Gunn, recuse myself on agreed order 21A, agree on all others.
Diane Berry, agree on all.
Wayne Stanfield, agree on all.
Amber Snell, agree on all.
Justin Mitchell, agree on all. At this time, I'll need a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
All right, Dr. Murphy, and second.
Second.
All right, the motion before the board is to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes, and we are now adjourned.